The doorbell rang unexpectedly, making Chloe jump. She froze, holding an unfinished plate in her hands. "Simon, stay, I'll open it myself," Chloe called out, wiping her hands on the kitchen towel. She slowly approached, looked through the peephole, and felt the ground give way beneath her. Standing outside was Elizabeth, her mother-in-law, whom she hadn't seen in 6 months. In her hands, the woman held bulky bags filled with treats, and a smile shone on her face. "Oh my God. She doesn't know," Chloe thought. Her fingers trembled traitorously as she turned the key in the lock. The door opened, and a tall woman in an elegant beige coat appeared on the doorstep. "Chloe, my dear," exclaimed her mother-in-law, stepping forward for an embrace. But then she froze. Her gaze slid over the hallway, noting the changes. The men's shoes that always stood on the shelf were gone, and the beloved jacket of her son, which used to hang on the coat rack, was missing. Elizabeth slowly shifted her gaze back to her daughter-in-law, and the smile began to fade from her face. Chloe saw the expression on her mother-in-law's face change: confusion, worry, realization. The bags in Elizabeth's hands trembled. "Where's Richard?" she asked quietly. Her eyes already told Chloe she knew the answer. "Come in, Elizabeth." Chloe stepped aside, letting her mother-in-law into the apartment. "Let me help with the bags." "Grandma's here," came a joyful cry, and Simon ran out of the children's room, followed by 5-year-old Olivia. "My darlings." Elizabeth set down the bags and opened her arms. The grandchildren rushed to her, hugging her from both sides. Chloe watched this scene, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She remembered how, not long ago, such family gatherings were filled with sincere joy. Now, each glance felt like a struggle. "Grandma, are you staying long?" Simon hung on her neck. "What did you bring us?" Olivia chirped, peering into the bags. Elizabeth stroked the children's heads, but her gaze kept returning to Chloe, as if searching for answers to unasked questions. "Children," Chloe said softly, "let Grandma take off her coat and go to the living room." Then, a heavy silence fell over the living room. The children excitedly sorted through their gifts, while the two women sat opposite each other, unsure how to start the conversation. "I tried calling Richard for the last 2 weeks," Elizabeth finally spoke. "The phone was always unavailable. I decided to come myself." She fell silent, looking at her daughter-in-law. Chloe clenched her fingers. "Elizabeth, Mom, look at the doll Grandma brought me." Olivia ran up with the new toy. "It's very beautiful, sweetie," Chloe patted her daughter on the head. "Simon, take your sister and play in the kids' room for a bit, okay? Grandma and I need to talk." Reluctantly, the children left, and the room fell silent again. Outside, dusk was slowly falling, tinting everything in gray hues. "How long?" Elizabeth asked quietly. "What? How long has he been gone?" Chloe sighed deeply. 3 months. He left for another woman." Elizabeth closed her eyes. Her hands, resting on her knees, trembled slightly. "Who is she?" "His new colleague. 12 years younger than him. I don't know the details. He just packed his things and left." "Why didn't you call me?" Elizabeth's voice carried hurt. "I didn't know how," Chloe admitted honestly. "You always used to be so proud of him." "He's my son," Elizabeth said slowly. "But that doesn't mean I approve of everything he does." She paused. "How are the children?" Chloe felt her voice falter traitorously. "Simon understands everything. He tries to hold it together, but I hear him cry sometimes at night." "And Olivia?" Chloe swallowed the lump in her throat. She keeps asking when Dad will come home. Elizabeth stood up and walked to the window. Her silhouette was sharply outlined in the evening light. Does he see them? Rarely. Every time he finds an excuse to postpone the meeting. And how are you managing, financially? Elizabeth turned to face her daughter-in-law. I went back to work. I took extra hours at the school, and on weekends, I give private lessons. Chloe tried to speak evenly. Richard sends money, but it barely covers the essentials. Her mother-in-law sat back in the armchair, sinking heavily into the cushions. Why did he do this? She asked, more to herself than to Chloe. His father and I raised him differently. Grandma. Olivia rushed into the room. When is Daddy coming? You're going to call him, right? Tell him you came? The two women exchanged glances. Tears stood in Elizabeth's eyes. My little one, Elizabeth pulled her granddaughter close. Daddy is busy at work, but I'll definitely talk to him. Chloe turned away, hiding the tears that had welled up in her eyes. How hard it was to answer these innocent questions every day, to see the hope in her daughter's eyes. Can I draw a picture for Daddy? Olivia perked up. Will you give it to him? Of course, sweetie. Go ahead and draw. When the girl ran off, Elizabeth sighed heavily. Forgive me. For what? For my son. For not raising him properly. For not calling you all these months. You're not to blame, Chloe shook her head. You were a wonderful mother. And a great mother-in-law, too. Her voice trembled, and she fell silent. Memories came rushing in suddenly, how Elizabeth taught her to cook Richard's favorite dish, how she helped with the kids when they were very small, how she gave advice during difficult times. You know, Elizabeth said slowly, I had a feeling something was wrong. A mother's heart. But I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe he was just busy, tired. The room fell silent, the only sound being the ticking of the wall clock and distant voices of the children. What are you going to do now? Elizabeth asked. Chloe shrugged. Keep living. For the kids. I have no choice. There's always a choice, her mother-in-law said firmly. And I won't let you face this alone. She stood up and began pacing around the room. I'll talk to Richard tomorrow. Let him try not to answer the phone. And then we'll think about how to organize your life. Maybe you should move closer to us and Grandpa. But the kids go to school and kindergarten here. That's all solvable. The most important thing is that you're not alone. At that moment, there was a crash from the children's room, followed by Olivia's crying. Both women jumped up and rushed to the children. It turned out that the girl, trying to reach the paints from the top shelf, had knocked over a box of toys. Simon stood nearby with a guilty look on his face. I tried to help, but I didn't make it in time. Elizabeth picked up the crying granddaughter and cradled her in her arms. There, don't cry, my sweet. We'll clean everything up now, and it will be fine. Chloe began picking up the scattered toys, while her mother-in-law rocked Olivia in her arms, soothing her. When the children were asleep in their room, Chloe and Elizabeth sat together in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Do you remember how we met? Elizabeth suddenly asked. Chloe gave a weak smile. Of course. I was so nervous before our first meeting, I ended up breaking your favorite cup. And at that moment, I thought, what a lively girl, so real, not pretending. Elizabeth paused. You know, I immediately knew you were the one. That you could make my son happy. Apparently, you were wrong, Chloe said bitterly. No, Elizabeth firmly disagreed. I wasn't wrong. You gave him everything: love, a family, children. And the fact that he couldn't appreciate it, she shook her head. That's his choice. And his mistake. Outside the window, the sound of a passing car was heard. The headlights briefly illuminated the kitchen, making both women squint. Sometimes I think, Chloe said quietly, maybe I did something wrong? Maybe I should have paid more attention to him, instead of just the kids and work. Stop, her mother-in-law interrupted her. Don't you dare blame yourself. You were the perfect wife. And you remain a wonderful mother. The morning began with the smell of fresh pancakes. Elizabeth had woken up earlier than everyone else and decided to treat the family to breakfast. The first to enter the kitchen was Simon, drawn by the delicious aroma. Grandma, did you not sleep all night? Oh, no. She smiled, flipping another pancake. I just got up early. At my age, I don't need much sleep anymore. And Dad loved your pancakes, the boy suddenly said. A silence fell over the kitchen. Elizabeth froze with the spatula in her hand, then slowly turned to her grandson. You know, Simon. Whatever happens, you can always count on Grandma. And Grandpa too? Of course, my dear. Always. We love you very much. I know, the boy quietly replied. Grandma, will you really talk to Dad? Of course I will, Elizabeth said firmly, even though her insides tightened at the thought of the upcoming conversation with her son. Sleepy Chloe entered the kitchen. Good morning, Elizabeth. Why did you get up so early? Sit down, her mother-in-law waved her hand when Chloe tried to help. I can handle it. You better wake up Olivia, or she'll be late for kindergarten. While Chloe was waking up her daughter, Elizabeth set the table. Watching the family gather for breakfast, she thought about how much her son had missed out on by trading this cozy family happiness for illusory dreams of a new life. After breakfast, the usual morning routine began. Chloe braided Olivia's hair, Simon checked his backpack, and Elizabeth packed snacks for the kids. Maybe I'll take the kids today? She suggested. And you, Chloe, can take your time getting ready for work. Thank you, but Chloe hesitated. I'm afraid the kindergarten teachers might ask questions. I understand, Elizabeth nodded. Then I'll tidy up the house for now, and in the evening we'll cook something together. In the hallway, there was the sound of scurrying. The children were putting on their shoes. Mom, I'm ready, Simon shouted. When the door closed behind Chloe and the children, Elizabeth sank heavily into a chair, took out her phone, and found her son's number. Her finger hovered over the call button. What was she going to say to him? How could she explain the pain she saw in his children's eyes? How could she reach his conscience? Taking a deep breath, she dialed. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Hello? Mom? Her son's voice sounded surprised. Is something wrong? Something's wrong, Richard. I'm with your family. With your real family. A silence hung on the line. Mom, I can't talk right now, I'm at work. You can, she snapped. And you will. Mom, Richard's voice began to show irritation. Let's not do this. No, son, we will. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just take 15 years of marriage and erase them? Leave your children behind? I haven't abandoned the kids. I send money. I call. Elizabeth felt a wave of anger rise inside her. You think the kids only need money? Do you know that your son cries at night? That your daughter asks about you every day? Mom, it's complicated. What's so difficult? Explain it to me. What could be difficult about loving your children? I love them. Richard raised his voice. But I have the right to personal happiness. Happiness? She smiled bitterly. What is happiness, Richard? Betraying those who believed in you? Destroying a family? You don't understand. No, you don't understand. There were tears in her voice. I raised you to be a different person. I taught you to take responsibility for your actions. And you've thrown it all away. The line went silent again. Only Richard's heavy breathing could be heard. Mom, I have to go. I have a meeting. You always run away from difficult conversations. Elizabeth shook her head. How unlike yourself you are. After the conversation with her son, Elizabeth sat still for a long time, staring out the window. Then she got up and began methodically tidying up the apartment. Wiping the dust off the shelves, she noticed the family album. She opened it and froze. On the first page was a photograph from Richard and Chloe's wedding. They looked so happy, so young. She turned the page. Simon's birth. Richard holding a tiny bundle, his eyes glowing with pride. Another page, Olivia's first steps, a family vacation, birthdays. Tears fell onto the glossy pages. Elizabeth carefully wiped them away with a handkerchief. The day dragged on slowly. She finished all her household chores, made lunch, even managed to go to the store for groceries. At 3 o'clock, Chloe went to pick up Olivia from the kindergarten, as her school lessons had just finished. Simon came home by himself. He was already grown up, walking on his own. Grandma, what's for lunch? He asked, sniffing the air as he walked in. Elizabeth hugged him. This is home, my dear. Here, you are loved more than anything in the world. In the evening, when the children had already gone to bed, Elizabeth told Chloe about her conversation with Richard. I didn't want to interfere, her daughter-in-law said quietly. It's his choice. No, dear, the mother-in-law shook her head. When a person has children, they don't have the right to make such a choice. They must think of them first. Chloe suddenly started crying. Do you know what the scariest thing is? I still love him. No matter what. Elizabeth silently hugged her daughter-in-law, letting her cry it out. The next morning, Richard called himself. Mom, his voice sounded guilty. I thought about what you said. And what have you decided? Elizabeth asked dryly. Maybe I should come. See the kids? Are you sure you're ready to look them in the eyes? To find something to say to them? Richard paused. I miss them, he finally said. I really miss them. Then why don't you come? Why are you hiding behind excuses? It's hard to explain. Try, his mother insisted. You have time. I'm not in a hurry. I'm scared, Richard admitted after a long pause. I'm afraid of their disappointment. Their questions. I'm afraid I won't be able to explain. Try explaining it to me first, Elizabeth said softly. What happened, son? When did everything go wrong? I don't know, confusion was evident in his voice. It just seemed that at some point, life was passing me by, that I was stuck in a routine, and you thought new relationships would change everything? Yes, maybe, he sighed. Mom, I made such a mistake. Mistakes can be fixed, Elizabeth said carefully. If you truly want to. And Chloe? How is she? And what do you think? There were steely notes in the mother's voice. She works 2 jobs, raises the kids, tries to hold it all together. I send money. Stop, she interrupted him. Money is not the most important thing. You know Chloe. She's never chased material things. I know, Richard replied quietly. She's special. Then why did you destroy everything? The line went silent again. Only Richard's heavy breathing could be heard. I'll come tonight, he finally said. If that's okay. Ask Chloe. It's her house. Mom, will you be there? Please. I'll be there, she sighed. But not for you, for the children. They need support. Thank you, Richard exhaled. I'll try to fix everything. Try, son. Because some things can't be. She hung up and wondered how to tell Chloe the news. Chloe took the news surprisingly calmly. Let him come, she said. The kids need their father. She didn't finish her sentence. Are you sure? Elizabeth asked gently. No, Chloe admitted honestly. But do I have a choice? Simon and Olivia miss him so much. You always have a choice, Elizabeth said softly. And the right to protect yourself, too. Chloe was silent. Sometimes I think, maybe this is for the best. At least there are no more illusions. The day dragged on endlessly. Elizabeth saw how nervous Chloe was, though she was trying to hide it. The children could sense the tension but attributed it to the presence of their grandmother. Mom, why do you seem so strange? Olivia asked during lunch. Everything's fine, sweetie, Chloe smiled. I'm just a little tired. Simon looked at his mother carefully, then at his grandmother. At 11, he already understood a lot. Grandma, he asked quietly when they were alone. Is something wrong? You'll find out in the evening, my dear, Elizabeth replied, hugging her grandson. At 6 in the evening, the doorbell rang. Chloe flinched and turned pale. I'll open it, Elizabeth said. On the doorstep stood Richard, haggard, lost-looking. He was holding bags with gifts. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Elizabeth stepped aside silently, letting her son into the house. Chloe appeared in the hallway. Hello, she said in a lifeless voice. Chloe, Richard began, but was interrupted by a joyful scream. Daddy! Olivia ran out of the kids' room and rushed to her father. Richard scooped up his daughter in his arms and held her tightly. Tears gleamed in his eyes. My little girl, he whispered, burying his face in her hair. Simon appeared next. He stopped at the door, unsure whether to approach. His face showed a complicated mixture of feelings, joy, caution, resentment. Son, Richard extended his hand to him. Simon slowly walked toward his father. Richard put Olivia down and tried to hug his son, but he pulled back. Where have you been? The boy asked, looking Richard in the eye. Why did you stay away for so long? A heavy silence hung in the hallway. Olivia looked from her brother to her father, confused. I got confused. I had important work. You're lying, Simon said quietly. I know everything. You left for another woman. Chloe turned even paler. Elizabeth put her hand on her shoulder, silently offering support. Simon, Richard knelt down in front of his son. You're right. I made a mistake. A big mistake. And we suffered, the boy continued. Olivia cried. Mom thinks I don't see her crying at night, but I do. Dad, are you staying for good now? Olivia interrupted, grabbing her father's hand. Richard looked up helplessly at Chloe. She stood straight, like a string. Only her fingers nervously fiddled with the edge of her sweater. "Let's go to the room," Elizabeth suggested softly. "We all need to talk." They all sat down wherever they could, Richard in the armchair, Olivia on his lap, Simon on the couch next to his mom, Elizabeth on a chair by the window. "I brought you some gifts," Richard awkwardly began. "We don't need gifts," Simon spoke up again. "We need a dad. A real one." "I am a real one, son." "No." The boy jumped up. "Real dads don't abandon their children. They don't leave for other aunts." He didn't finish, burst into tears, and ran out of the room. Chloe flinched as if to follow him, but her mother-in-law stopped her. "I'll go." Olivia, who had been quiet on her father's lap, suddenly asked, "Dad, is that aunt, is she kind?" Chloe stood up abruptly. "Sweetie, let's go. It's time for bed." "But, Mom." "No buts. It's late already." Richard gently lowered his daughter from his lap. "Go on, sweetheart. I'll come back soon." When Chloe took the girl away, Richard covered his face with his hands. "What have I done?" The room fell silent, broken only by Simon's muffled sobs from the other room, where his grandmother was talking to him. Chloe returned to the living room a few minutes later. She sat down across from her ex-husband. "Why did you come?" "I missed the kids." "Just the kids?" There was bitterness in her voice. Richard looked up at her. "Chloe, I ruined everything." "Oh? What do you think?" She smiled bitterly. 3 months, Richard. 3 months you hardly showed up. Just weekly calls. Just promises." "I got confused," he said quietly. "I thought I had found love." "And what about before that? 15 years, was that not love?" "Love," Richard admitted. "Real love. I just didn't appreciate it." "And now?" Chloe asked. "What's changed?" "Now, everything." He stood up and started pacing the room. "You know, Mom is right. I'm not the person I used to be. I betrayed everything I believed in. I betrayed you. The kids. And now you want to come back?" He stopped in front of her. "Try to fix everything. And what about your new love?" There was pain in her voice. "It was a mistake, Chloe. A terrible mistake." Elizabeth came back into the room. "Simon doesn't want to come out," she said. "He said he's tired and wants to sleep." Richard flinched as if to go to the door, but his mother stopped him. "Don't. Give him time." "How much time?" he asked bitterly. "How much time does it take to forgive betrayal? Are you ready to wait?" Chloe asked softly. "Are you ready to prove every day that you can be trusted again?" "I am ready," he answered firmly. "If you'll allow it." Elizabeth silently watched this conversation, knowing that the fate of the family was being decided right now. "You know," Chloe said slowly, "I've thought a lot over these months. About us. About the kids. About what went wrong." "And what?" Richard asked. "That love isn't just a feeling. It's also a choice. Every day, choosing to be together, no matter what. And you, would you be able to make that choice again?" There was hope in his voice. Chloe shook her head. "I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Too much pain. Too many resentments." "I understand," he said quietly. "But I'll try. Every day." The kids, Elizabeth interrupted. They're the most important. Whatever you decide, they must come first. I know, Mom, Richard nodded. Now you know. But before, didn't you know? Chloe's voice once again held bitterness. Before I only thought about myself. My desires, my problems. Richard ran his hand across his face. God, how selfish I was. You were, Chloe agreed. But what matters is who you want to be now. From the children's room came Olivia's crying. I'll go check, Chloe said, standing up. Can I? Richard asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. He carefully went to the children's room. Elizabeth sat next to her daughter-in-law. How do you feel? I don't know, Chloe confessed honestly. Anger, resentment, pain. And at the same time. She fell silent. At the same time, you still love him, her mother-in-law finished for her. Yes, Chloe whispered. And I hate myself for it. From the children's room came Richard's soft voice. He was telling Olivia a story. Then everything fell silent. After a while, he returned. She's asleep. And Simon's asleep too. It's time for you to go, Chloe said. It's already late. Yes. Of course, he hesitated. Can I come tomorrow? Only for the kids. Thank you, Richard sighed. I won't let you down. I won't again. We'll see, Chloe answered quietly. When the door closed behind Richard, she collapsed exhausted onto the couch. How are you? Elizabeth asked. I don't know. Everything inside me has turned upside down. I imagined this meeting so many times. But now what? Now I don't know what to do. Forgive? Forget? Start over? Or let go completely? And what does your heart say? Her mother-in-law asked softly. It's torn, Chloe admitted. Between what's right and what I want. The next morning, Elizabeth was getting ready to leave. I need to go home, to Grandpa. And you need to sort things out on your own. Stay a little longer, Chloe asked. I really need your support. Her mother-in-law hugged her. You're strong. Much stronger than you think. And the decision is yours to make. And if I make a mistake? There are no right or wrong decisions in life, Elizabeth wisely said. There are only those that we are willing to live with the consequences of. Will you come soon? Olivia asked, hugging her grandmother. Of course, sweetheart. And you and Grandpa should come visit us. Simon stood a little to the side, frowning. Grandma, did Dad really change? Elizabeth squatted in front of her grandson. You know, darling, people can change if they really want to. But for that, you need time. And forgiveness. What if I can't? And that's okay, she stroked his head. The main thing is to listen to your heart. Just before leaving, Elizabeth pulled Chloe aside. Do you remember what I said on the first day? I remember. Well, whatever you decide, I'm on your side. You are part of our family. And that won't change. Chloe hugged her mother-in-law. Thank you for everything. Call anytime, said Elizabeth. And remember, sometimes you need to lose something to understand its value. In the evening, Richard came again. This time without gifts, only with a soft toy, Olivia's favorite rabbit, left in his apartment. Simon locked himself in his room again, but Olivia joyfully ran into the hallway. Maybe we should go for a walk? Richard suggested. All together. Chloe hesitated. I don't know. Please, Mom. Olivia begged. Okay, Chloe gave in. Simon. She called. Will you come with us? There was some rustling behind the door. The park was quiet. Olivia ran ahead to the swings. Simon lagged behind, his hands in his pockets. How's work? Chloe asked, trying to break the awkward silence. Fine, Richard answered quietly. Chloe, he stopped. I've been thinking about us all the time. About what was, what could have been. She also stopped, watching Olivia swing. You know what's the hardest thing? She said quietly. Every evening answering her questions about you. Making up reasons why Dad doesn't come. Seeing the disappointment in her eyes. Richard clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I'll fix everything. I swear. Don't swear, Chloe shook her head. Just be here. Every day, like you promised. Simon, who was walking behind, suddenly came closer. Dad, do you remember when we flew the kite here? I remember, son, Richard's voice trembled. You were so happy then. Can we do it again sometime? Of course, Richard gently placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Whenever you want. This time, Simon didn't pull away. Days went by. Richard came every evening, spent time with the children, helped Simon with his homework, read fairy tales to Olivia. Chloe watched these changes with cautious hope. She saw how Simon gradually warmed up, how Olivia smiled happily, how Richard himself changed. One evening, when the children were already asleep, he stayed in the hallway. Chloe, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know. I've never stopped loving you. She was silent, feeling how treacherously her heart ached. A month passed. Olivia had already gotten used to her dad showing up every day. Simon still kept his distance, but no longer locked himself in his room when Richard arrived. Chloe noticed how Richard had changed. The showy confidence was gone, replaced by a new, deep seriousness. He listened more than he spoke, cared more about others than himself. One day, he brought an old family album, which he had taken with him when he left. I found it. At my place. Its place is here. At home. Home, that word echoed in Chloe's heart. One evening, Simon asked his father to stay and help with a difficult math assignment. They sat over the textbook until late in the evening. As Chloe passed by her son's room, she overheard their conversation. Dad, is it true that you won't leave again? There was a pause. Never, son. Unless you and Mom want it. And that other lady? She was a mistake, Simon. A terrible mistake that almost cost me the most precious thing, you. One day, Elizabeth called. How are you, dear? Slowly, Chloe replied. Richard is trying very hard. And your heart? What does it say? Chloe was silent. It says that people deserve a second chance. If they truly regret it. It comes on its own, when the heart is ready. I know, Chloe answered quietly. Now I know. Gradually, their life began to take on a new rhythm. Something irreversibly changed, but something new appeared, a deeper understanding, a more conscious relationship with each other. Richard learned to notice the little things, the fatigue in Chloe's eyes, the anxiety in Simon's voice, Olivia's silent sadness. He learned not just to be there, but to truly be present in their lives. One evening, yawning, Olivia sleepily muttered, Daddy, I'm so glad you're back. One weekend, they all went to Elizabeth's house. The old house greeted them with warmth and the smell of pies. "My dears." The grandmother greeted them joyfully. The grandfather, silent and stern, just hugged his grandchildren tightly. When everyone scattered around the house, he quietly said to his son, "Take care of them, Richard. This kind of chance may not come again." "I know, Dad," Richard replied. "Now I know." Chloe, who was watching this scene, felt warmth spreading in her chest. In the evening, when the children were already asleep in their old room upstairs, the adults sat on the porch, talking about simple things, work, school, plans for the future. "Do you remember," Elizabeth suddenly said, "how you, Chloe, first came to us? You were so shy." "I remember," Chloe smiled. "I was afraid you wouldn't like me." "You became family," her mother-in-law simply said. "Forever family." Richard looked at his wife, and in his eyes was such tenderness that Chloe's breath caught. On the way home, Olivia fell asleep in the back seat, resting her head on her brother's shoulder. Simon also began to nod off. "Our travelers are tired," Chloe said softly. Richard glanced at her quickly. "Chloe, can I stay tonight? Just be here." She was silent for a long time, staring at the road. "Yes," she finally answered. "But I know," he interrupted. "Little steps. Day by day." "Day by day," she echoed. In the evening, after putting the children to bed, they sat in the kitchen. There was still distance between them, but it was no longer as insurmountable as before. "You know," Richard said softly, "every day I thank fate for this chance, for the opportunity to make things right. And I thank it for our children smiling again," Chloe answered, "for the hope that appeared in their eyes. You are amazing." He carefully touched her hand. "Your ability to forgive." "Not to forgive," she shook her head, "to believe in people, and love, and family." Time passed, and gradually old wounds healed, making way for new experiences, new understandings. Richard didn't just return, he became a different person, more sensitive, more attentive. Chloe also became stronger, more confident in herself, and learned to value not only her family but also herself. Simon stopped locking himself in his room when his father came. Now they did their homework together, played, and had heart-to-heart conversations. And Olivia. She just glowed with happiness when the whole family was together. One evening, when the children were already asleep, Richard and Chloe were sitting in the living room. Outside, the rain softly drummed on the window. "Do you remember?" Richard said quietly. "How we met on a night like this, rainy evening." "I remember," Chloe smiled. "You gave me your umbrella, and you got completely soaked. And you never regretted it." He was silent. "Until the moment I made the biggest fool of my life." "The past can't be changed," she said softly. That weekend, they all went to the park. Richard really brought the kite, just like he promised Simon. They flew it together, and the joyful laughter of their son echoed through the park. Olivia was jumping around, trying to catch the tail of the kite. Chloe watched them, thinking about how amazing life is, how something new can be born from the shattered pieces of happiness, something that might even be stronger than before. "What are you thinking about?" Richard asked, approaching her. "About us," she simply replied. "About how everything is possible if you believe." That evening, Chloe called Elizabeth. "You know, I think everything is getting better for us." "I always believed in you, dear," her mother-in-law responded warmly. "In your love, in your wisdom." "It's thanks to you," Chloe said quietly. "You didn't let us fall, you supported us in the toughest moment." "No, dear, it's all you. Your hearts found their way to each other." Chloe smiled, looking through the window at her husband, who was swinging Olivia. Months turned into a new story for their family, a story where there was room for both forgiveness and repentance, for a new, more mature love. Richard proved every day, with actions, not words, that he had changed. Chloe was learning to trust again. The children were blossoming, feeling that their world had become whole again. Elizabeth simply loved them all for who they were and rejoiced in the fact that her family had managed to overcome their trials and become even stronger. One morning, at breakfast, Simon suddenly said, "You know, I understand now." "What?" Richard asked. "That to love means to be able to forgive and give a second chance." Chloe felt a lump in her throat. Richard hugged his son tightly. "You're wiser than all of us, kid." "I'm not a kid," Simon grumbled as usual, but he didn't pull away from his father's embrace. 6 months passed since the day Elizabeth first stepped into their changed home. 6 months of hard work on themselves, on their relationships, on rebuilding trust. But it was worth it. They had become stronger, both as a couple and as a family. They learned to appreciate every moment together, every smile, every hug. Richard never returned to his old apartment. He stayed at home with his family, gradually, day by day, restoring what he had almost destroyed. They spent the new year together, the children, the parents, and the grandparents. When the clock struck midnight, Olivia shouted, "Let's make wishes." "But I already have everything," Chloe said quietly, looking at her loved ones. Richard gently took her hand. "You know, I also thought a lot about wishes, and then I realized. The most important one already came true. You forgave me, you gave me a chance to make things right." Simon, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the sofa, suddenly said, "I'm glad we're together again." Olivia climbed into her father's lap. "I always knew Dad would come back. You just had to believe very, very hard." Elizabeth quietly wiped away tears, watching them. Life doesn't stand still, it moves forward, bringing new challenges and new joys. But now they faced it all together, as a real family. The story of Chloe and Richard became a story not only about forgiveness but also about how true love can overcome any obstacles, about how everyone deserves a second chance if they are ready to change sincerely. When Elizabeth looked at this family, she understood. Sometimes, you need to lose something valuable to understand its true worth. And then, perhaps, fate will give you a chance to get it all back, but now on a new, deeper level of understanding and love.